Hello, I'm Joshua and I'm an INTP, and first and foremost I'd like to say thank you for viewing this video and subsequently visiting my channel. The topic of this video will be on study apps, and there's only really one app I want to talk about in this video, and it's not a promotional but something I have to say as a math and physics major and a math and physics tutor that I absolutely hate Chegg Study and these other various apps that have been popping around the internet and on phones. And so the reason I don't like these things is because whether people realize it or not, if you're actually doing mathematics or physics or any intensely technical STEM subject that requires a lot of mathematical knowledge, your best way at studying it and practicing it is by not using solution manuals in the way that it's endorsed that people ought to use them, if you use them at all. Truly, the best way to study math and physics, which I make the students that work under me do, is to work out the problems and have somebody there standing next to you or sitting next to you and telling you when your reasoning has gone astray, or whenever you get stuck or do not know how to proceed in that problem, to ask you a question or give you an alternative, simpler problem than that one that allows you to start seeing the reasoning and intuition that gets you to moving towards the solution in that particular problem that you're stuck on. Too much of the modern age is about making things easier for people at the almighty beckon of the dollar, which is really mediated through our idea of expediency and utility. Expediency is death to genius. Utility, I mean, I can't say that it's really death to it. And even if you're not trying to be a genius, if you just really want to understand something from the standpoint that you would just like to stand above your peers, because I can tell you, as somebody who's in math and physics courses, that I encounter people all the time that, even though they're math majors or they're some kind of science major, they don't really understand mathematics all that well. I mean, especially you find this more to be the case with biologists and sometimes chemists. And I think, the truly difference between those who wind up at the top of most highly competitive spaces is the difference between those who can reason about all the fundamental things that are necessary to build the subject itself. So if you look at the history of chemistry or biology, if you look at the history of its developments, whether or not you're talking about physics, mathematics, chemistry, biology, or any of the sub branches of these various STEM domains, you will always see a portion of its historical development, especially in physics, that is almost completely described by mathematical progress. And you even find this in biology. I mean, you find it everywhere because math is the queen of science, as it was once said by Gauss. And you cannot really be a scientist even an experimental scientist. Good experimental scientists know how to do rough calculations. Good experimental, at least the ones that are relevant to their field. That doesn't mean that everybody's a general mathematician or everybody who's doing a STEM subject ought to understand number theory. I'm not saying that, God help you if you have to take a number theory course as an engineer. And especially engineers are pretty damn atrocious with this kind of mindset and attitude that it's just about getting a result, and I don't really need to understand the reasoning behind what I'm doing because I'm not going to use this again, and this is really the kind of vein or vehicle that these apps are really driving their, I guess, appearance on. I much prefer things like brilliant.org where it's an actual course and they're going to challenge you with problems to reason about things, but these kind of online solution manuals, I just think that this is the worst thing that could happen for trying to protect the integrity of competency. I wish if they were really trying to protect the integrity of competency across STEM domains and STEM related domains, that they would first ask people before they sign up for the websites, well, are you in math, physics, engineering, something kind of major? Because if so, you cannot use the site. If it were the case that, I don't have anything against, I guess, writing majors who have to take a calculus course and they just think, I'm not really, even I think then that's just whatever, lazy, but still, I don't care if they're the incompetent boobs of the world who can't understand analytic reasoning or who don't value analytic reasoning. I got into an argument with a student in not really in a class I was in or directly working with, but just who made a comment that whenever I was explaining something to another person, that I was explaining it too technically. And I thought, what the hell do you mean too technically? Are you a STEM major? I'm sorry. It's definitely the case that if you're popularizing science, then maybe you find other ways to explain science. But if you are in actual science, I hate to break it to you, but science is a technical field. That's the basis of science. And if it's the case that you as an individual are afraid of the technicality or do not like the rigor and the reasoning that's required to do mathematics, then you should not be a scientist, because no person who does not like to think, who does not like to reason, no person who cannot appreciate an intellectual challenge, and no person who's not at the very least willing to put in the intellectual tread to understand and grasp the most complicated and technical intellectual challenges should not be in a laboratory. They should not be building a bridge, and they definitely should not be in front of a classroom instructing others on how to really be able to understand and to achieve results in any particular scientific domain. I mean, you find this attitude more ubiquitous amongst undergraduates, but it's just the case that but you even find this attitude in some people that wind up in graduate schools, depending on the graduate schools that they're attending. And I think, how the hell did this person get in? And I know people say that, well, some people learn after some point in time, but then I have like a lot of engineer friends who have degrees and they still haven't really learned. And I think that and I notice the differences between the ones that still have those attitudes and the ones that have a different kind of attitude are the ones that wind up doing really reputable things versus the ones that don't, because it's not the case. Well, it's a lot like being an athlete. If you're going to be an engineer, it's not necessarily the case that you're using the math, but just like a basketball player is not necessarily going to be squatting on the basketball court, doesn't mean they shouldn't get into the gym and do some squats. Just because basketball is not directly determined by the overall amount of absolute strength that somebody has, it does correspond to the amount of explosive strength that a person can develop in their body. And so for one to say, well, look, I'm not going to be throwing a dumbbell around on the court, so I don't see why I should be throwing a dumbbell around on the court. In fact, after I leave this gym, I'm never going to be using these dumbbell exercises specifically ever in a basketball or competitive situation. Therefore, I'm not going to take the time to really do them. Look, if you're intellectually lazy or just utterly can't reason in a sophisticated way, you're not going to accrue very much monetary value as an engineer. I mean, maybe you're happy with being at the middle of the road or something like that, or the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to those kinds of fields and so on and so forth, because if you work for certain large corporations, you have even your assholes and idiots and those things. And so you do have the fact that there are bad engineers, and you do have the fact that there are middle of the road engineers and everything like that. But I think, are you that fucking lazy that you're willing to do something like that? It's amazing to me how people of that kind of mindset and orient can get through engineering schools. But I wonder, if it's not the case. Well, it's definitely the case that we allow more people into universities. And that's where a lot of this has come from. We allow more people into universities and technical programs that don't really belong there. They shouldn't be there. I don't think there's anything wrong with having the motivation of, making a lot of money or something like that, but I would say it's a lot like being a surgeon. You get to be a surgeon if you're competent. Not to say that, surgeons shouldn't make a lot of money or anything like that. Not to say engineers shouldn't make a lot of money, because they honestly should. They do a lot of things that are very valuable to the infrastructure of society and the actual propagation of monetary gain across time in terms of patents and inventions and keeping the world moving at a certain technological pace. I'm not saying that that's not enormously valuable, but it's definitely the case that because it's that fucking valuable, it should be the case that people who go into it actually have the basis of the kinds of individuals that make it work. And I'm not an egalitarian. I don't have this mindset that anybody can be a scientist. I don't have this mindset that anybody can be an engineer, or that the field should be friendly to any and everybody from all walks of life. I can say from my own experience that I'm a minority. I may not be a minority in strictest sense of the word. I don't really know how people want to use that, but I would say this: look, I'm a minority in the sense that I am African American. I do not come from a wealthy background. I do not have an intellectual pedigree to me. Neither of my parents went to college. Both my mother and my father dropped out of high school. My father was arrested before he finished high school. He happened to be Caucasian, but that's neither here nor there. My mother got pregnant with my older sister. By the time she was 16, she didn't finish high school. And so it's not like it's the case that I'm somebody. To be frank, I don't even really know how I get the ability that I have, or where I get my tastes and interests for certain things from, because it's not ubiquitous through my family tree. I'll just put it, be frank like that. And I would say too that my grandmother, she did go to college, but she got a degree in business. That's very different from being a mathematician and a physicist. But I'll say this, that I don't see why any kind of, just because I don't lower the standards for myself, what I mean? That's the way I look at it, I don't say I need to do anything differently than another person just because of the walk of life I've come from, I've come from a very harsh and seriously unfavorable set of circumstances in life. Maybe not the most unfavorable ones in the world. I've had friends who had, well, I can't say that they're friends, but I had acquaintances when I was younger who had mothers who were addicts. I've seen babies who happened to have mothers who were addicts when they had them. I've seen somebody OD in the middle of an apartment complex, and their child watching them. I know somebody whose mother was a prostitute, or at least did sex work and things like that. So I don't think that I have the worst life. I know people who, so I've seen someone killed, and I've had a family member murdered, but my house personally has never been shot up or anything like that. I have not personally seen as much violence as maybe some other people have. I've experienced violence. I've been jumped and I've been in a lot of fights. I've actually inflicted violence on other people and things like that whenever I was growing up. But I know even with what I did, it was not as worse as it could get. So I'm not saying that I have the worst life in the world, because I don't think that. A lot of things could have been worse. A lot of things could have been worse, because I've been a relatively precocious kid since I've been relatively precocious since I was a kid. I mean, it was apparent to people that I was smart. Nobody was gonna say that I was gonna. Nobody would have said that I'd be who I am today, but certainly nobody would have called me dumb. And it was definitely the case that I did not struggle in school. So I mean, it could have been worse, but it's definitely the case that I mean, it wasn't like I came from, I don't know, Excelsior Academy or something like that. You know, there weren't math Olympians or anything like that strolling through my high school or anything like that. I didn't know anything about an AMC or anything like that in my early scholastic experiences. You know, well, I mean, even deciding to be a mathematician and a physicist, I didn't really know what math and physics was from the standpoint that there were still open questions and things like that, and that those are things that people could actively pursue, I guess, like results and solutions, and nor that, I mean, I just didn't understand what they were. I mean, from the standpoint of, I did not have the same kind of idea about math and physics that I have now as somebody who majors in them. I did not have that before I started doing that, which I would not say is the same condition of most of my peers. Almost everybody I'm in a classroom with, or all other tutors that I'm in the tutoring center with, or the other TAs that I know that are part of the physics or the math department, almost every single one of them has a parent that was either an engineering major or was a math major or some kind of biology, something, man. They were some kind of science major, and they knew they were science and math kids even in high school. I never took AP physics before I took my physics 230 course, you know, my first physics course in classical mechanics, calculus-based physics. Never. And I never took a trigonometric or algebra-based physics. I always did calculus-based physics. And I had no idea of what physics was really up until that point, aside from things I saw on YouTube and lay discussions about physics and everything like that. It was good. It was a good thing that I was good at math and everything like that before I decided to be a physicist. But I'm telling you, man, I'm not a description of the norm. But even though I come from a background with a good amount of deficiency, that's what I would say, it's a deficient background, I do not ever think that it's appropriate or okay for me to get different status or, I mean, from a qualitative standpoint, I hope that people, you know, can appreciate some of the things that I've managed to do coming from the place I've come from, but not in the sense of this that I think that, you know, anything should be made easier or different for me just because I have had a more trying set of circumstances that I've had to come from. I think that that's absolutely ridiculous. And I think the fact that, you know, it seems like there are more and 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 more things to try and make science and mathematics so accessible to others that, you know, it's nauseating because not everybody should do it. Not everybody should be it. It's just not a thing. Because it's not necessarily about ability solely. It's about a certain personality or a certain set of interest, you know? If you're not interested in being if you're not interested in technicality, if you don't favor analyses, it doesn't mean that, you know, it's the case that you don't have other interests or something like that, but if it's the case that whenever you see math or whenever you see a long equation, you feel anxious about it or you don't like it or you think, God, why does science or engineering have to be described by so much mathematics? Can't we do without it? No, I don't even want those kinds of people. Don't do it. I don't even think those people should be in wet labs, you know, and that's where you find a lot of them. You know, I don't even think those people should be in wet labs because, you know, it's about progress in science. It's very much so about progress. That progress has come by through a lot of hard work and sincerity and honesty and things like that. But I think that really, man, the fact that it's not rigorous enough for my taste, you know. I think that it's an absolute crap of a thing that most biology majors get away with taking just calculus if they even are forced to take calculus. And I say forced, and I don't think it should be a force. I think it should be a willing thing. I don't think you should be a biologist if you haven't taken up the partial differential equations. And all, people would like shriek like, "Oh my god, why?" Well, because guess what the hell you're doing? You're talking about change, flux. Like evolutionary theory is the freaking fundamental, in the fact that like you still have things in biology described by linear equations and things like that, or that those are good enough approximations. I mean, I'm not as privy enough as a theoretical biologist to know like the math that's involved in biology. I do know it gets very technical, but it's just a case that it doesn't seem like that's the standard for most places. It's just not. And I know that these Chegg study platforms and things like that, like, look, man, either you need to become more organized as a person, or you need to pick a different major. If it's the case that your procrastination makes it such that you don't perform very well, then you need to freaking do something about that. If it's the case that the procrastination, so for me, procrastinating doesn't necessarily hurt me as much as it may hurt another person, because part of the reason why that is just because I tend to gravitate towards doing mathematics and physics in general. That's just what I tend to do. Because I like to do it, and I like the feeling of getting better at something. And I also like solving the problems. It's just a general interest in the problems because, God, man, like, I don't know. It's just you can't anticipate oftentimes what really a result means. And the actual significance of results in physics can only be understood when you understand enough of the math and you understand enough of the physics. And when it rings or sings true to you in your mind, it's just something that you can't appreciate in any other way. Physics has a different kind of weight to it. Math has a different kind of weight to it when you really have expertise about whatever it is you're doing, because the results have a certain feeling to them that some people would describe as weight. And that comes from a level of competency in a technical sense that maybe, you're not going to have when you first start doing it. But that's something that you're looking to build towards as you continue to progress on in your education. And you are absolutely robbing yourself of those, I guess, like that impressionistic landscape, such that you have a real taste and fervor for the thing. You don't become anybody who's really worth anything by being somebody who looks for an easy road. Euclid said it a long time ago that there is no royal road to geometry, or there's no royal road to STEM in general. And the fact that it seems like many, 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 many more things are here to try and make it as accessible and as expedient as possible is very nauseating to me. I mean, even I'm still looking for how to make math videos on YouTube, but even in the math videos I'm making, it's not like the math I'm talking about are going to be the math I'd be talking about or showing is going to be what's on other YouTube channels. And two, I'm going to make the people do some of the lifting on their own. It's just that's what it takes to really understand something. The more you invest in something, the more it's based on your own personal ingenuity, the more that it's based on your self-exertion, the more you own it and the more that it's yours, whether it's from thinking or whatever, it doesn't matter. Because there's a certain level of intellectual substance. I'm not necessarily going to call it intelligence, but there is a certain kind of intellectual substance which many people would call as competency or expertise that only comes from experience and practice. And to skimp on those things is just a detriment. And you will, and people wonder, I mean, like, people really wonder why there are differences in, performance outcomes. Sometimes it doesn't come down to differences in abilities. I mean, I would say when it comes to even my peers and the other students I see around me, I wouldn't say that well, I mean, like, I put it like this, like, nobody's really all that much smarter than the next person next to them. Especially in physics and mathematics, there are a lot of talented people. I mean, there are a lot of talented people, and many of which who come from better backgrounds and environments than, you, and probably got more head starts and things like that than you did, but I tend to outperform people, and my classmates tend to look at me, or at least hold me in a certain set of esteem, a certain set of esteem. And so it's the case that I wouldn't say that the reason why I am able to do the things that I'm able to do, and I also wouldn't say that my understanding comes from the fact that I was born a certain way, or purely from the fact that I was born a certain way. And I wouldn't say that any kind of performance differences between myself and the other top 5 or 10% of the talent pool in my classes comes down to differences in abilities. I wouldn't say that. That's not the case in most instances and scenarios, no matter what campus or university you go to. Sometimes you find it be the case that some people have really, really profound abilities and things like that, but that's not the norm. I'll be frank, that's not the norm even on college campuses. If you find somebody with an IQ over 176, you have found a very rare individual. I mean, very, very, very really. Anywhere, whether that's on a college campus or whether or not you're talking about your professors, it's just that's not the norm. That's really not what you find. And so I would say that whenever I evaluate my peers and things like that, I don't see much difference between us. And maybe it's the case that I have some more ability than them, but I would say even with IQ, that as it pertains to intellectual achievement, most of it can be predicted by conscientiousness and openness. And so I don't think that a lot of it comes down. I put it like this, like there have been many 6'5" basketball players in the day, and there have been many, 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 many different people to do it before. But the reason why Michael Jordan put up the numbers that Michael Jordan put up was not because Michael Jordan was just that much gifted than other people. It had something to do with personality, and it had something to do with industriousness. And I would say whenever it comes to any kind of differences in people, once there's been a certain selective process of evaluation, you're applying to get into schools. There's not that much difference between you and the next person, whether you're talking about Caltech, MIT, USC, whatever. Everybody's fairly similar to one another on that campus, for the most part. I mean, there's a distribution everywhere, but there's just there's not much variance, especially from department to department and departments close to one another. There is not that much variance. And so when you're looking at how people tend to perform, or what people tend to achieve and things like that, then a lot of that comes down to what the individual chooses to do with themselves, and some things that deal with their background and so on and so forth. But you can't complain, man, and you can't try to amend the rules or something like that to prefer to your preference and everything like that. I mean, one of the things I dislike about certain political ideas is that, we need to make a game that's more, I guess, well, I'd put it like this. Like, you never try to force people to play your game. You beat them at their game. That's what you do, man. Like, if you really want to be something that I guess, like, overcomes or establishes some kind of new equanimity or new equilibration, you know? If it's the case that you say, man, I know that there's. So I guess, like, what's an easy way to put it? You have to, like, let me think. What's an easy way to put it? You always have to look at yourself. I'm not going to say, well, I shouldn't say you always have to look at yourself this way, but I would just say whenever I think about how I'm doing things or the way in which I'm going to do things, I think like this. Maybe when it comes to my peers and academia and the system that's set up and everything like that, maybe I'm much more like a 6 year old who wants to play um, in a competitive basketball league with a lot of older kids. All these kids are older than me, much older than me, and they're bigger than me and everything like that. This league has been going on for a very, very, very long time, and it's the case that, they're all relatively competent and everything like that. They're good at what they do. I'm not suddenly going to prove that I'm worth being a part of this environment or that I'm on par or at least deserve the same respect that they do for their skills if I say, God, guys, my lungs are really hurting. Can we slow down the game maybe? They're just playing a little too rough. I can't quite, and my body's small, it's little. I didn't get enough milk, I didn't have the same amount I didn't eat the same amount of vegetables as them. I don't have personal trainers. I don't have access to a gym. It's just not fair, I just can't quite do it. I didn't get all the same privileges and advantages that they did. They have so much more advantage and privilege than me. Can we just change the game? They have way too much advantage and privilege. So much so that I can't win. I can't play. It's like, no. Think about that. No. That's never the way that I would do it. I mean, and that's how I think about it. That's really how I think about it. You just wouldn't do it that way because that's nothing worth. What are you doing at that point? You're not earning anything. You're not gaining anything. You're not changing anybody's perceptions or anything like that. I don't know what you think that you're doing whenever you talk about the game in that way or when you talk about life, in fact, in that way, but you're not doing anything to make anything better for yourself or other people, per se, in terms of the expectations and opportunities that are offered to people. At least I don't think, if I'm going to pick how you change the world, you beat people. That's how you change the world. Like, you do it better than you do it better than them. You do it better than they did it. If you do it better than them and you did it better than they did it, guess who has guess who, I wouldn't say, maybe you don't get the money or something like that. I don't know. I don't think life is about money fundamentally anyways. So it's just, I would say this, that it's all about the results, Not, the proof is in the pudding. That's just how I would put it. If it's the case that they just can't quite do it like you. And if it's the case that, there's a certain kind of aura or brilliance about the whole deal, then people can think what they want, They can really think and say what they want, Because whenever you actually do the deal, you play the game, and you beat them at their own game, they gotta either find a new game to play, and you can go and find a way to beat them at that, or the conversations have to change about who can play and do what. It's just that simple. If somebody tells you, no, you cannot be a forward guard, no, you cannot be a shooting guard, and you say, fine, all right, I'll raise you a wager. If I can put up numbers better than every damn forward or shooting guard in this league, if I can do it so good that, you know what, there's no person in history, I don't know how much you want to work, because that's a very hard one, but if you say, I will outdo everyone, I will outdo everyone in everything that came before me, then it's the case that either they're going to have to kill you, or they're just going to have to accept that you can play forward or shooting guard. It's just that simple, you know? Even if they don't want to, you know why? Because people can't argue. People can. They can either kill you, or they just have to, they either have to kill you, or they have to accept it. And at least if they kill you, you can really cry injustice. At that point in time, you can really say, these people are corrupt, the world is just completely immoral, and it is indeed unjust. But if you haven't gone out of your way to do the other thing, then the argument that you put then the argument that the system is just really that much against you is not really going to hold the same kind of weight. I would just put it like that. And that doesn't mean to say that there aren't unfair things in life. I mean, I come from a very disadvantaged situation. I would not say that life is fair, like even in the slightest. There's a reason why I'm an existentialist. I'll put it to you like this. Look, I'm a physics major and a mathematician. You know, most other people, including my professors, people who are relatively intelligent, do not care as much about philosophy or psychology. You know, everybody's curious and everything like that, but I mean, it's definitely the case that they more so care, they have more of their curiosities towards economics or entrepreneurial interests and things like that. You know, they tend to want to think about things like venture capitalism and Silicon Valley and everything like that, because that's where the money is, you know, that's how a lot of scientists are motivated, but not all of them, I mean, like, not all of them or anything like that, but I would just put it like this, you know, like, most people, or they care about, you know, a lot of them care about art and music and things like that from an aesthetics standpoint. They value aesthetics, and they see the necessity and the importance in certain human endeavors, but that doesn't mean that they're, so I'll put it to you like this. Some people do, you know, it's true, like a lot of people have a lot of varying interest. A lot of people have varying interests and relatively varying levels of expertise. And in fact, the more productive a person is, I mean, it's hit or miss. Some people are just very narrowly focused. Some people have more than one thing that they're interested in. Though, I'd say the person that has more than one thing that they're interested in is a rarity. Though you find a lot of people who play musical instruments, partly because that was part of their upbringing. You find a lot of people who are into art and theater and things like that, partly because that was part of their upbringing and everything like that. Who knows, you know? There are various reasons for such things, but I'll put it to you like this. Whenever I try to talk to people about human psychology and things like that, they look at me like I'm crazy, and they wonder, what department am I in, you know? And then when I talk to other people about cognitive science or neuroscience or psychology or existentialism or Socrates or Nietzsche or anything like that, they wonder, are you a philosophy major? Are you a psychology major? Are you a neuroscience major? I get that a lot. No, I'm none of these things, you know? I just find it interesting. But I'll put it to you like this. I don't find these things interesting, and I don't take the time to study them when I should be doing, you know, math and physics sometimes, because I didn't come from a landscape of problems or issues that I didn't really have a real impetus to understand why life and people are the way that they are, because I really feel as if I did. I really feel as if I did. And I mean, a lot of people have had harder lives than I have had. I know plenty of people who have had harder existences than I've had. But that doesn't mean that mine didn't drive me to certain ends. I mean, they certainly did. But it's just a case that you know, even if those things are true, it doesn't make it the case that I'm indignant. That's the way that I would put it, you know. I don't care, and I know it's not necessarily rational or anything like that. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily rational. It may just all be pride from my standpoint, because I don't really want to. I guess I'd put it like this. Like, I suppose it's pride. That's the thing I would say that it is. I want to be proud of what I do, and I want to be proud of myself. And I cannot be proud of what I do, and I cannot be proud of myself if it's not real, in the sense that whenever I try to evaluate it from an objective standpoint, it doesn't hold up. I mean, I don't like that with my ideas. I don't like that with the things that I do. And I'm not saying everybody should be like me. What I am saying is that whenever it's the case that perhaps you care about things for multiple reasons, maybe you care about being or doing something because you really want to please your parents, or you really want to please somebody else besides yourself. Maybe you want to do things because you want to have a lot of status in your life. Maybe you want to do things because you want a good amount of consistency and stability to be a part of your life. Maybe you do things because you want a lot of freedom or something like that. I tend to be in that category. I can tell you that whether or not you want to, I'm not saying pleasing people comes down to doing, I guess, like, so I put it to you like this: people are a lot more pragmatic than you think. Being competent and reliable is something that will win you the affection of many people, like more than you would imagine. Um, if you want stability in your life, chances are, if you're competent, and chances are, if you're exceptional, people will pay you to do things for them. It's not like it's the case that people are at a loss for people who really understand what they're doing. I mean, there's not 1,001 of them, hanging around on trees. Even if people want to make it out like that, it really doesn't work like that, because most people are lazy. That's the real reason why. Most people are lazy. And so, cinch it up, man. Like, get off Chegg. Do the work your damn self. I think, though, people who like stability tend to be more willing to do this, but I do know human nature just kind of... If you want status, man, it's going to be hard flanking for status when you're just at the middle tier and rung like everybody else. If you want people to look up to you, then force them to look up. It's like, is that simple? Grow taller, be grander, be over man. Do that. And in order for you to do that, you have to be over yourself. Man is something to be overcome. Exert yourself. Exert yourself. Get away from Chegg. Stay away from it. Stay away from it. Stay away from all that crap. There's a lot of platforms. I mean, it annoys me to no avail whenever I'm dealing with, a lot of the times it's the case that a lot of this too comes from the fact that universities ask people to be universalists. So they'll say, well, you're a poetry major, but you got to take some goddamn college algebra. The poetry major is like, why? But, that's where some of this comes from. But I think it's more so the fact of the matter that a lot of people are moving towards STEM in general because of the lucrative nature of the thing, but there is no royal road to mathematics. There's no royal road to physics. There's no royal road to engineering or chemistry or anything like that. Maybe institutions can't say to you that people still really believe in the idea of genius. Maybe institutions can't say that, if you're just some little piecemeal kid, that nobody's going to care. I mean, a lot of people, it depends on what school you're looking at, because, well, yeah. there are differences. If you come from different walks of life and everything like that, then maybe you don't have to earn your place in the world and everything like that, or you don't have to earn your way in the world. So, but if you do if you do come from a situation where it's basically, well, if you don't know whether or not you're coming from a situation where it's going to be all on you, I would implore you to figure that out. So, but it's definitely the case that if you do come from a situation like that, no laziness, man. That's just not going to get the job done. No complaining about other people or anything like that. And you would think, well, everybody who knows that they have to make do for themselves in the world just decides to comport themselves in a certain way that is characterized by industriousness. No, that is not the truth. And the more and more time you hang around people, you realize that is not the truth. It's just the case that stay away from Chegg. Stay away from it all. If you're a math and physics major, or you're a math or chemistry or biology or something major, do not look up solutions, And if you do have a solution manual to books and you get stuck on a problem, and there's nobody around for you to talk to, then you need to take a goddamn piece of paper and put it under the lines of that problem, and you only move it down line by line by line in order for you to be able to start thinking about how to reason about that problem. But if you're not doing it like that, my friend, you're not trying. And it's maybe at the end of the day, I don't know if the sum total amount of it comes down to effort, but I will say that, you can tell the difference between those who exert themselves and those who don't, even in intellectually driven subjects like mathematics and physics. And so I would say that there is the idea that gifted or highly intelligent people or something like that work hard, that if you work hard, you're stupid or something like that. I would just say you need to kill that notion right now, because maybe the reason why people spread that rumor or something like that is because they didn't want you to be successful or something. I don't know, man, but I'll put it like this, was I a good student when I was taking... I wasn't a good student until after Calculus 3. It wasn't until differential equations. I'll be frank, it wasn't honestly until after differential equations that I became a good student. But physics changed that, physics definitely changed that. It just changed that. And part of the reason why I changed that is not because, I wasn't doing well in my classes, but just because, look, when you want opportunities and things like that, it's about what you can do for other people. It's not about it's not about your grades. Though sometimes it's the case that your grades can get you someplace and everything like that. They can open doors or whatever, but they're not going to keep you there, man. Science is competitive. I'll just put it like that. Science is very, 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 very competitive. And maybe you want things, like people who have certain life circumstances and things like that may not ever have the desire and ambition to do something that's really cool or interesting or something like that. But it's the case that if you do want to do something really cool or interesting in science, you got to be fucking competent, It's just, that's the way that it is. If you want to be an engineer, you want to work for Google or something like that, well, guess what? They're not just letting anybody in there. And even if you don't have the ambitions or the dreams to work for Google or something like that, what if you just want your own amount of financial freedom? Sorry, man. You have to have a certain amount of, Cal Newport calls it career capital, and I would say you do not get that by being mediocre, okay? That's just not how it works, okay? It's not the case that life is fair. It's never going to be fair. So you cannot play fair back with it. In fact, you have to try to beat life, I'm not saying like cheat life or something like that, but I am saying beat it, just drive it to its knees, because that's the only thing it's going to try to do to you, it's the reality. That's the only thing that it's going to try to do to you. You get for all you can get and get while you can. I think that, but it's the case that you can't even begin to participate in that whole gauntlet if you're not ready for the game, But And I think whenever I see things like Chegg Study and all these other various platforms for, I would say, STEM related things, not the educational ones. Chegg Study would like to say that it's an educational platform, but Brilliant.org, that's an educational platform. Chegg Study is a goddamn dope dealer, but it's like a legal dope dealer. It's really no different than a drug dealer to me, you know? It's like, I'm helping people, right, right, that's exactly what you're doing, you know? But whatever, you know, differences in opinions, I suppose. But, and I'm not like, I don't know, I'm not envious of them. I think, you know, everybody has the right to do whatever they think is most profitable. And that's the only reason why they're out there, because it's a very easy marketplace. People are lazy, you know. Human beings want not to have burdens. They don't want to exert themselves. They don't want to bother themselves with the effort or something like that. But I would say, even if that's how you are naturally, you know, even if that's how you emotionally feel right now, um, it's going to kill you. Not kill you in the sense that, you know, it makes it such that you'll literally die, but it's going to kill your prospects or your opportunities to make choices. And if you ever want to feel like you have some autonomy in life, or you have some control, or you have some freedom, then you need to really, really work hard. And so, say no to Chegg. That's my public service announcement. Thank you for watching.